Welcome to the Evidence-Based Marketer, a podcast focused on the science of marketing with a special emphasis on financial services. Whether you're looking to grow your business or provide a better client experience, we focus on how you can use data and research and time-tested strategies to be a more effective marketer.
Think back a few years ago to Super Bowl 50 and the ads that played. And for many people, one of the highlights of most Super Bowls, especially if you don't care which teams are playing, is in fact the ads. What was interesting about this is they hooked up some volunteers to fMRI machines, which allowed them to see what was going on in people's brains as they were watching the ads. And what they found was really interesting. The Ad Council, which every year reviews the ads from a professional standpoint, really loved one particular ad. And yet when you looked at people's brains, that ad at a fundamental level was scaring them. So with that, I'd like to welcome you to the first episode of the Evidence-Based Marketer. I'm William Chettle, Director of Experience and Engagement at Symmetry Partners, and I'm joined today by my co-host.
I'm Andrea Loyne, Digital Marketing Strategist here at Symmetry Partners.
And we put this podcast together because we really wanted to focus in on how marketing has changed to become so much more evidence-based. There's a story of the department store owner, John Wanamaker, at the turn of the last century. And he said that half of all advertising doesn't work. I just don't know which half. Now that's really changed. And we actually have a much better sense of what works and what doesn't work. And we've put this podcast together to focus specifically on the science of marketing, the evidence of marketing, because we now have great insights on a scientific level, on a research level, on a digital level, on what resonates for people and what doesn't resonate for people. This podcast is going to focus a lot on financial services marketing. That's our background. But a lot of what we talk about is going to be applicable to any industry, any profession. Because this is one of the things about marketing is that about 90% of all marketing across the board for any industry or every industry is about the same. And it's the last 10% that is going to be different based upon particular terms, things that are resonating or not resonating for that audience. And of course, just knowing your particular profession and what's going to make sense. With that said, let's go back to Super Bowl 50. And the top rated ad, at least as judged by the Ad Council, which is a council made up of advertising and marketing professionals, was an ad for FedEx. And in this ad, it's set back in caveman times. A caveman tries to send a package tying it to a petrodactyl, and the petrodactyl gets eaten by a dinosaur. And so he goes and tells his boss that package wasn't delivered, and the boss says, "Well, you should have known better. You should have used FedEx." And the caveman says, "What? FedEx hasn't been invented yet." And the boss says, "Well, not my problem." So the caveman's very, very upset and walks out of the cave and is immediately stamped on by a giant dinosaur foot. So it's funny, it's cute. And yet the interesting thing about this is that when you looked at volunteers' brains, and they were in these fMRI machines, which are recording everything that's going on in the brain, one thing was really clear. The amygdala, which is, amongst other things, the fear center of the brain, was lighting up.
So it scared them.
It scared them. And you have an ad that you're spending millions of dollars for that is scaring your customers. And so what's interesting is that the professionals, the marketing experts saying, great, great ad. And yet what people's brains are saying is, this ad's scary for me. And I think you have to have that kind of lens and that kind of perception. And we now have the tools to do a lot of the things. We're not going to be hooking up all our clients and prospects to fMRI machines, but understanding that what we think is good from a creative standpoint may not be as good from an actual marketing standpoint.
Yeah, and from the addition of that digital component into marketing now, we can dive deeper into seeing what's going on outside of just attaching our clients to fMRI machines.
But I think what's interesting is the digital has really changed everything, because this has allowed us to have sort of the equivalent of an fMRI machine, right, and understanding what people are clicking on or not clicking on, and being able to sort of test and learn. The actual creativity is still super important, because that's kind of where you start. Like, what's going to be a great concept for my campaign or for my ad? And then you test the heck out of it and find out, was this a great concept after all, or was it just something that was fun and creative, but didn't resonate with your target audience.
Yeah, and when you have the creative set, you have the ability to change little things, right? Like the subject line. No one realizes how important the subject line can be, and you can test different subject lines. So the creative side is still there, but the science behind that creativity is now important.
And it's interesting, if you look at the top-rated ad of a Super Bowl 50, it was actually a Disney ad. And this is basically top-rated according to people's brains, which is focused on a bunch of football players kind of relaxing after a game or just in the locker room and saying, I want to go to Disney World. I want to go to Disney. I want to go to Disney World. And what they found was this was triggering all kinds of associations in the brain with Disney, something that a lot of people grew up with. And so it was memories, it was positive associations. And so the ad council didn't think much of it, but people's brains really, really liked it. And this is one of those things that they've done a lot of research on things like Coke and Pepsi.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at Coke and Pepsi, in a blind taste test, people actually slightly prefer Pepsi.
I do.
A lot of people do. It's got a stronger taste than Coke. But when you ask people what they prefer, more people will say Coke. And when you look at what's going on in their brains, again, it's going back to memory and a whole bunch of recollection. So Coke has actually built a very much stronger and more durable brand that is associated with all kinds of positive things than Pepsi. And I think part of that is actually, if you look at their logo, Coke's logo has stayed the same since the beginning. It's got that interesting kind of funky script. And Pepsi's changed their logo every 5 or 10 years. If it's worth looking up just how often they've changed it. So they've never been able to have that kind of consistent, durable brand that we have fond memories and associations about, because they're changing all the time. Yeah. Coke hasn't.
I'm a Pepsi girl, but when I think of Coke, I actually think of the Coke can with the Santa Claus on it. I just remember that brings up memories as a kid. That was the Coke can came out with Santa. You were getting close to Christmas time. Now Christmas decorations go out in like June, but that Coke can always started off Christmas season. So things like that really make a difference.
Yeah, and the point is that if you are able to create positive associations and positive memories, etc., you can actually do better than what many would regard as a superior product.
Right. And you don't just get there by having Santa on a can. Each of these companies all have a strategy behind it, right? So they have to figure out who are they targeting, what are they trying to do, and then putting together a strategy. You can't just go, oh, well, we'll try this, we'll try a little this. You start with a strategy, and then you develop that strategy, and you can test each piece along the way in that strategy, but it's really important that you start with some kind of plan to get you there. So Coke didn't say, oh, we're going to keep the logo the same and that's it. They have a strategy behind their marketing. They have emotion in their commercials. They know that this association happens, and they've taken advantage of that on social media. There's a Coke and Pepsi war on social media, and Coke is always responding to people, saying Coke or Pepsi, and Coke's the one that always responds. So they're putting that out there, and they're not just doing this, off the cuff. They have a strategy behind it, and that allows you to test that strategy.
Yep, and I think that's so important. There's a quote I'm very fond of from the French writer Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, which is, a goal without a plan is just a wish. And unfortunately, so often in marketing, people jump to the wish and they don't have any kind of plan behind it. And it's so fundamental to understand who you're focused in on, what messages resonate with them, and what you're trying to achieve, and having very strong and defined quantitative goals, and because I believe most things can ultimately be quantified, but so many people don't take that fundamental step. And then you use, of course, the evidence-based marketing approach to test all this stuff. So I want to do a campaign to retirees who are between the ages of 70 and 80, and I want to focus on these messages. And I believe that I could have conversations with maybe 10% of them, and perhaps 2 or 3% will become clients. That's your setup.
Yep, that's your strategy.
Now you got to actually implement it and test the heck out of it. And maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the ways that people can actually implement and test using an evidence-based approach.
When the creativity is there and you have your whole plan behind it, You can then do things like testing, it may sound silly, but there is a psychology behind colors. So testing the different color buttons that are used out there, right? We at Symmetry, we used to use just a plain button. We didn't really do much with it. And then all of a sudden we started testing the different colors on it. And we found that people were clicking on our yellow button more so than our blue buttons. And so now we have yellow buttons, and it's a plus for us. These are all things you can measure. So make sure you're doing that. You can run different subject lines, right? Do you start your subject line with a number, an odd number? Then you're going to get more traction. But is that true for every email you send out? You can test that now. You can even test things like landing pages you've created. You can create an A and a B version of your landing page where you want someone to look at your content. And you can see what things, such as where the content is on the page, right? Is it above the fold? Is it below the fold that it's getting more downloads on? So there's lots of things you can look into. And if one way isn't working, test another way. And that's the beauty of being able to see the metrics behind it. Mm-hmm. You can always see what's going on the other side of your emails and on your web properties.
And it also makes you humble, because it really doesn't matter what you think. It's what your clients and prospective clients think. I don't really love yellow buttons. Yeah. I would rather have nice, beautiful blue buttons. But the people have spoken, and they want yellow buttons, and so we're going to give them yellow buttons. And I think that's really important. It's not about you; it is about what is resonating with the people that you want to work with, and that helps make you, I think, humble. And the other thing is, as Andrea's alluding to, is you've got to keep getting better at this.
Me too.
And there's this Japanese principle of keisan, which is continuous improvement, and I think any marketer with his or her soul has to be thinking about that. How can I keep getting better? What can I test? Because to loop us all the way back to football, marketing is like football. It is a game of inches. And so often you find that people are looking for that magic marketing piece, that magic
the
silver
Hail
bullet.
Mary play.
Yeah, that's like, if I just had this website or brochure or whatever it is, business is going to come pouring in. Mm-hmm. And it generally doesn't work like that. It's making a few small changes here and there and measuring them, and then making a few more small changes. And the beautiful thing is, like, none of these are going to be definitive on their own, but you add this change and that change and that change, and you test and you learn. And over time, you create a very, very I think, overwhelming case for whatever you're trying to market, mm-hmm. And you get better and better, and you're creating more and more reasons for people to work with you or to consider your product or your solution.
And your strategy will evolve with that too. So you have this content strategy, and just because something doesn't work, it's not a failure. Because if something doesn't work and you've measured it, you may find that, yes, the whole thing together may not have worked, but there were bits and pieces in there that worked. And you can take those bits and pieces and build off of those into something better. So just because you have what you might see as a failure, it's not. It's helping you get those couple of inches every time to get better and better.
And, to sort of paraphrase something Thomas Edison said, he said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I just found 10,000 things that didn't work. And failure is something you should embrace, because it tells you, okay, this didn't work. Now I can go and look for something that does. If you're relentless about it, if you look at the metrics, if you keep testing, chances are over time you're going to find things that are successful for you and successful in your business. And you can never get complacent also, because we live in a very fast-paced, ever-changing world, and things keep changing.
We heard from one of our advisors yesterday mention that he started out and he was marketing to everyone, and just taking any client he could get, and he was finding that it didn't work. And by measuring things and testing things, he was able to find the demographic that he wanted to work with, and completely changed the setup for his business and the value that he provided. And he focused on this one niche of client, and it helped his business grow. So by starting out big, he found all of these things that didn't work, and then he was able to hone in on what worked by measuring. And he was the first of our advisors yesterday for me to hear the word measure come from. Measuring and seeing what works and what doesn't, that's an important part of it, and can really take you into the next phase of your business.
And in future episodes, we're going to talk about things like niche marketing. We're going to get very specific about digital marketing, how to be more persuasive. We're going to focus in on topics like websites and social media. Mm-hmm. We're really going to try to cover the gamut here of how to market marketing opportunities, and frankly, just how to be more effective in what you do.
And how to measure it all in the end, right? So we'll always bring it back to that evidence-based marketing.
And we're going to start our next broadcast or next podcast is going to be focused specifically on branding, which is one of those fundamental things that you need to look at regularly. And even if you got an amazing brand, it's probably good from time to time to look at it again and make sure that it's still working for you as hard as it was, when you first started out with it. So that's what we're going to focus in on. Until then, thank you so much for joining us, and we really appreciate sharing our excitement and enthusiasm about the world of evidence-based marketing. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Evidence-Based Marketer from Symmetry Partners. If you have any questions, suggestions, or would like more information, please visit us at theevidencebasedmarketer.com.
Symmetry Partners LLC is an investment advisory firm registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. The firm only transacts business in states where it is properly registered, excluded or exempted from registration requirements. No one should assume that future performance of any specific investment strategy, product, or non-investment related content made reference to directly or indirectly in this material will be profitable. As with any investment strategy, there is the possibility of profitability as well as loss. Due to various factors, including changing market conditions and/or applicable laws, the content may not be reflective of current opinions or positions. Please note the material is provided for educational and background use only. Moreover, you should not assume that any discussion or information contained in this material serves as the receipt of or as a substitute for personalized investment advice.
Please note that nothing either stated or implied on this podcast is intended to be compliance or legal advice regarding your marketing program.